Sega.
Do I even need to talk? Well, no, but I'm going to anyway. I mean, if you even somewhat enjoy third-person shooters, then Vanquish should not be a hard sell. Hell, if you like the concept of fun whatsoever, Vanquish shouldn't be a hard sell. I've only got about 3 criticisms of the game, give or take, and one of them is just that there isn't a PC port. So if you think about it, one of my only 3 criticisms is that there isn't more of this. Made by Platinum, more known for their love of character action games, and Hideki Kamiya's love of blocking people on Twitter. Simple rule. When Platinum are really throwing everything they've got into a game, they come out crammed with content. Brawlers that last for 10 hours or so without outstaying their welcome. They're flashy and filled with spectacle, but this is not a case of style without substance. Their games have a ton of depth, and are usually more challenging than the norm. They reward mastery and memorization. Vanquish is one of their shorter, and I'd argue more accessible titles. Understandably, it's more shallow than their character action games. I'm not trying to sell it short, however. This is 5 hours of non-stop fun. The game opens with San Francisco getting microwaved from the orbiting space colony Providence, a US energy station that sends microwave energy back to Earth. As you can see from the intro, it is succeeding far beyond expectations. It's the future, and Russia is being taken over by a cartoon villain named Zaitsev, running a regime called the Order of the Russian Star. And they give the US 10 hours to surrender, or New York is next to get a bit toasty.
In 10 hours, we exercise our newfound strength once again.
And with that, the Navy is sent up to wrest back control of the station. The events of this game are largely fictitious.
Responsible for the coup in Moscow. We believe the operation is being led by a Red known as Zaitsev. Oh yeah, this is Sam.
We play as Sam Gideon. He smokes and isn't a complete bastard. And that's about it. Actually, he might be a bit of a bastard, but it'd be hard to notice next to the giant old man Lieutenant Colonel Robert Burns.
What the fuck, man?
A man who has built a lifelong military career based on getting every other soldier on his side killed, so that the promotion pool is a bit limited.
You're not allowed to smoke on the ship.
Once we're on Providence, which proves to be a bit of a bumpy ride, it's just Sam and Burns getting progressively angrier at each other while being followed by an inconsistent and rapidly diminishing number of soldiers.
Lieutenant Colonel Burns, we'll handle this. You two, stay here. Yes, sir! Will you die? Come on, we're moving. Sam, I'm going high. Burns! Take the squad down the low road. They'll leave you to hold your hand. Drag your sorry ass into battle.
I don't care about the story being lax at all. It provides a fine excuse to blow up robots. And it doesn't take itself seriously besides. There are setting and character notes in the loading screens and in the manual, and while this does explain the universe a bit, it doesn't subtract from the enjoyment at all if you don't read this stuff. The dialogue is big, brash, and dumb, delivered with such conviction that I just love it.
Miss me, sweetheart? Jesus, you? I liked you better when I thought you were dead. And I liked you better when I didn't have to hear your shit. Let's go.
If there is any criticism I can make, it's that it does lack direction for most of the runtime. I just feel like I'm haphazardly running around Providence blowing up objectives. Sam has been sent in alongside the Navy to test out the ARS suit, and to find a scientist called Candide, who designed the energy systems in the space station and in the suit itself. In one part early on, Sam does run into Candide.
Professor Candide? Professor?
No doubt about it. Sam, you have to help him.
And very quickly loses him. I mean, granted, he was attacked by Zaitsev in a suit made of laser cannons and jetpacks, and I guess that does kind of distract. But Sam just kind of rolls with losing Candide. Doesn't seem all that fazed by it. Probably figures if he just kills more robots, he'll have to run into him again eventually. Burns is at this point mad that Sam didn't tell him the exact purpose of his mission. But then again, he's mad about a lot of things, so this is just another one for the list, and is very quickly forgotten about 5 seconds later when Burns has newer things to be angry at.
I think what you're trying to say is fuck off.
Like this lift. So, the story is lightweight and pretty straightforward. Zaitsev bad, Candide somewhere, shoot everything between yourself and these 2 points, and then resolve as necessary. I do like that the characters and the plot are not taken seriously.
Here, so I can take you to the enemy positions.
Lead on, fight.
This way, sir.
It has a sense of humour that adds to the charm. So, what we're all here for, the gameplay. Vanquish is Platinum's take on a third-person cover shooter, and by that I mean, the end-of-level scoreboard keeps track of percentage of time spent in cover, and you should treat that as judgmental. Well, let's start off with weapon variety, which is decent. You know, you got your standard selection of the accurate and practical assault rifle, a beefy shotgun, a more damaging but less accurate heavy machine gun, sniper rifle for long range, and a rocket launcher with lock-on for the big bastards in vehicles, grenades for crowd control, and insanely useful EMPs for getting out of a jam, or setting up enemies to put them in a jam. And we've got the more outlandish and unique toys, like the fire and forget lock-on laser, and one of my favourites, the LFE, which fires a large orb of light like a giant bubble-based shotgun. The only weapon in the game I can't say I like is the disc launcher. It just lacked the impact of the bigger weapons and the accuracy of the smaller ones. It didn't feel enjoyable to use. There's also DLC with 3 more guns that I don't have. There's an interesting upgrade system in play. If you grab the occasional upgrade pickup, or grab a copy of a weapon you already have when it's at max ammo, it ranks up, giving it at first a higher ammo capacity, and eventually upgrading things like accuracy, or damage, rate of fire, or lock-on speed. Whilst it does make scavenging for weapons post-battles more enjoyable, it did perhaps make me a little complacent in my weapon choice. Dropping an upgraded weapon doesn't reset it, but I always kept the HMG and shotgun handy, and just kept one slot left over for whatever else I wanted, rather than mixing and matching different combos of weapons. And that's more a fault of my own than the game's. It does have an interesting trade-off, however. If you die and use a checkpoint, all of your weapons rank down. Plus it adds a death to your end of mission tally. Resetting a mission entirely to avoid these 2 marks against you isn't much of a pain anyway, because no individual segment really lasts for that long, so the checkpoints feel a little bit needless, I'd say. It's saving you 5 minutes instead of 10. You can carry 3 weapons at a time, and swapping weapons in Vanquish looks really cool, even though it's the thing that makes the least sense in this game. Somehow, a little grip that Sam is holding, called a blade system, stores weapon data and rebuilds weapons on the fly based on memory. In gameplay terms, this means you can swap weapons out while still firing your weapon. Fucking incredible. Sam himself controls fine. He's got a dodge roll that's really satisfying to spam. And at first I thought the game felt a little rigid, but I dropped that as a criticism when I realised that, well, it's a third-person shooter and I don't want to be slipping all over the joint while trying to hit things. Oh, and then there's the whole deal with jet thrusters in slow motion, where you do want to be sliding all over the place while you hit things. And fucking hell, avoiding footage of me using this stuff up until this point was actually really bloody difficult, not worth it, and I failed a couple of times. These are the features that make Vanquish what it is. Sam can slide between cover, make strafing runs around enemies, and deliver jet-thrusted punches and kicks. Sam's augmented reaction suit also grants him slow motion, and I love the way the game handles slow motion. Because you have to be doing cool shit to get it. You can't just stand back and pick away with perfect accuracy. You have to be exposing yourself by diving out of cover, going on the offensive with the jet thrusters, or activating it after a dodge roll. And this also lowers your field of vision so it can't be used behind the numerous chest-high walls. So, using slow motion is still powerful, but you're giving up safety to use it. My favourite use of slow motion is after kicking into an enemy, and then you just get to rain down fire on everyone else who's around them. Always a blast. Of course, using your jets in slow motion drains meter, and the amount of time you get feels pretty fine-tuned. You get just enough to cut loose, but it goes away pretty quick, and if you misjudge, you can find yourself overheated and surrounded by enemies. And fuck, you feel vulnerable when overheated. Your movement speed decreases and your dodge roll becomes far less effective. If you're near death, slow motion kicks in if you haven't already drained the boost meter, and this saved me from tight spots pretty often. It's odd to say that getting near death to trigger this can actually be a valid thing to do. Being able to use slow motion without having to be jetting around or lowering your vision, it's pretty powerful, and it can help you mop up enemies. And, of course, get the fuck to safety if you feel so inclined. Oh, and then there's Smoke Break. Attracts fire, here useless, best use of smoking in a video game since Metal Gear Solid, spam it whenever you can. There are also enemy walker mechs that litter the arenas. They're perfectly designed so that you have to use your jet to flank them. After you kill their pilots, you can make use of them yourself. And they are pretty powerful, and they're fun to use besides. But their ammo is very limited, and they're fragile. So, they're nice little power-ups, however temporary. Every weapon has a unique melee attack, and some are just plain better than others. The heavy machine gun is just objectively the best. A flip kick that you can then use to trigger slow motion, regardless of whether some robot just got his bont's chin checked. Okay, that's a really fucking stupid phrase. I'm gonna keep it in the review anyway. I love the basic assault rifle's barrage of punches, but I'm sad to say it's rarely that useful. And it's a damn shame because Platinum loves their storms of punches. The shotgun gets a charge up backhand, which I never charged because I actually found that out after I recorded the footage like the twat I am. Uncharged though, it's still bloody handy, and just plain old satisfying. I'm not going to go through all the unique weapons, I'm just going to note that each of them have their unique perks, and they're enjoyable to look at. I used melee whenever possible, just because I could. The thing is, however, is that melee is too taxing to be useful. One successful melee attack drains all of your boost meter and leaves you overheated, so if there's more than one enemy left when you use your melee, you're left high and dry. The melee attacks themselves are outclassed even by guns at very close range, because you're better off just dodge rolling out of smack range and then slow motion gunning whatever close the gap with you. Still, you don't play Vanquish to be practical. You play it because you can rocket into Russian robots. It's also a case where the disc launcher shows its unique perk, as its melee attack doesn't drain from your boost meter, and it does damage over time, giving it one nice little niche to fill. Sam has all of his abilities from the start of the game, and you just need a little bit of experimentation to figure them out. Sam being really sodding powerful works due to the scale of the battles you're placed in, and the enemy types you go up against. While even the bog standard robots, called Georgies, can bring you down pretty quickly if they catch you in a bad spot, if you're playing even moderately well, you'll pick up how to navigate and bring down groups of them with very little trouble. Meanwhile, the various Romanov-type enemies present unique challenges. The artillery types bomb you, drill robots rush you down and destroy cover, plus they have an instant kill move to keep you on your toes. Flamethrower Romanovs can overheat your suit, and for whatever reason they carry a club so that they can finish you off. And the Scorpion ones, which are real bastards, well, they switch between rushing you down in Scorpion form, trying to hit you in melee, and keeping you in cover with machine gun fire. Vanquish is ultimately tough but fair. If you make a mistake, you get your shit pushed in, but it never feels unfair. Enemy attacks are quite choreographed, and all of them have counters. Here's my death count from one of my 2 playthroughs, the one where I use checkpoints instead of restarts. Vanquish isn't easy, but it's far from bullshit difficult. While I'm certain you could beat Vanquish without using Sam's more unique moves, well, why would you want to? Aside from anything else, the game does provide ample ways to utilize them, and they're justified by the level design. The encounter maps are generally spacious with long open sightlines. Weapon crates and good cover are spread around enemies, not towards them. So if you want to get more goodies, or get an advantageous position, well, you're going to have to cross that space pretty quickly. Every weapon between long range and short range is useful near enough all of the time, because, well, if you've got a shotgun, and some fuck is way over there not being shotgunnable, I mean, if you didn't have jet thrusters, you'd actually have an excuse, but there's no need to wish for a sniper rifle here, sunshine. Just jet over there and get the bastard. Vanquish maintains a good balance of making you feel stupid fucking powerful and actually being quite vulnerable. Oh yeah, and there's suicide robots as well. Almost forgot about them. Honestly, the only enemy from this game that I dislike are the sniper rifle robots, and they're so infrequent that they're not that much of a bother. Fuck them anyway. The big battlefields that the game makes use of feel quite lively thanks to all those allied soldiers knocking about, mostly letting Sam do the work. They are useless, but their uselessness serves a useful purpose. Sam has an unlimited supply of two things, cigarettes and needles. I'm well aware cigarettes are limited in-game, but that's probably just because Sam is cutting back. Jamming downed allies with whatever's in those needles props them right back up, and it blows a gun out of their form. Handy, yet horrifying.
You saved the others?
Yeah, they're already free.
They're lost. Those bindings felt great.
I don't believe this.
So, it pays to dart about being the coolest combat medic ever. And I mean, you don't want those soldiers to die, do you? Look at that stat screen. Also, because I just mentioned a stat screen again, which is something Platinum employs quite often, let's talk about this game in relation to other Platinum titles. Despite being a break from their usual genre, it shouldn't come as much as a surprise that Vanquish still feels very much like a Platinum game. Enemies still teleport into very arena-like spaces. There's a large enemy variety, and the enemies are mixed and matched to create interesting and unique encounters. And there's a central character ability that feeds into everything else you do, much like Bayonetta's Witch Time or Metal Gear Rising's Blade Mode. Sam's moveset is much more limited than either of those two games, but nearly everything he does feeds into his slow motion. You've got a whole host of tricks to trigger slow motion, and they're each handy in a variety of different situations throughout the game. A last second note about gameplay before I move on. I played this on an Xbox 360, which has very few issues with slowdown. The PS3 version, I'm told, does plummet at times, or so a friend tells me. I have not played it myself. Bayonetta's PS3 version also had the same problem, and this is another reason besides anything else that I want a PC port. Consistent 60 FPS Vanquish at 1080p would be a gift for the eyes. I do have a couple of nitpicks, unrelated to gameplay however. While the game does look fine, the screen can get quite busy at times. It's mainly due to how large some of the effects are, and with how much light they give off being incredibly blown out when in slow motion. It's also because the game in general is pretty bloody busy, and it's also a case that my eyes suck. My other nitpick is perhaps a little bit contrary. The environment the game takes place in, near start to finish, is an industrial futuristic city with an unshakable love of the colour grey, which does get a bit dull on the eyes. The one time we're dropped into a wooded area for all of 15 minutes, it's a real palate cleanser thanks to this. This problem is also somewhat mitigated by the gradual shift from day to night over the course of the game. Another thing that helps with ignoring this is the pacing. This game is breakneck. No single segment lasts longer than half an hour, with most stages and set pieces lasting 20 minutes tops. You are constantly on the move, and the gradual stream of boss fights, new enemy types, and unique gameplay challenges serve to keep things constantly interesting. Out of the whole runtime, I feel there's only one bit that falls flat, and it's a slow tram ride where we have to snipe spotlights. It lasts for less than 10 minutes, so while it does break the flow a little bit, it picks up the pace again in no time flat. Another thing this game does right, and a thing Platinum does well in general, is spectacle, in that it's something in which the player is a participant, not a spectator. Most of the time, barring one or two exceptions, when something cool is happening, it's not in a cutscene or given to the player via a QTE. The game has a rail shooter segment that follows the stupidest and most nonsensical rail system over Providence. At one point, the cargo train the enemies are riding goes upside fucking down over you. Why would it do this? Who gives a shit? It's escalation of challenge. Keep shooting. A sky-high highway is crumbling while you try and fight across it. You should probably run, or preferably jet. A giant flying battle station that blew up said highway. Well, it's gonna fire lasers on your approach. Dodge that shit. Then we've got the boss fights, and I'm going to compare them to Binary Domain for a second. While I prefer the visual design and the variety that Binary Domain had, they just play far better in Vanquish. The bosses make you use your abilities to dodge wide attacks, flank so you can hit open weak points, and knowing when to use slow motion to pile on damage. While in Binary Domain, most bosses would just bull rush and knock you over. Boss health bars and very obvious weak points also help with keeping the fights moving. The game does repeat boss fights semi-regularly, dropping them in as mid-stage obstacles after their first appearance. It's forgivable, however, because it does change up the circumstances in which you face these bosses just enough to keep them interesting.
That buzzard up there is starting to piss me off.
Let's take the first boss of the game for an example. It's a giant spider robot that's heavy on small missile barrages with occasional artillery. This is the first of its two forms. When you defeat the first form, it goes to a bipedal mode and it becomes far more about dodging around laser spam. During this first encounter with the boss, you have a raised platform and gun turrets. Next time, how about fighting both forms at the same time on a flat plane while you're below them? And the third and final time you encounter this boss, he just fucking ambushes you! The boss is dropped in like a sneaky bitch in a cramped environment. And well, you've got to sort this out right now, because he's not going to leave. In this sense, I do appreciate the repeated boss fights. It gives you a good barometer of how much you've improved over the course of the game. You fight this kind of boss 3 times over the course of the game, and this is a recording from my second playthrough. Knowing all the ins and outs of a boss and having the weapons to just utterly annihilate them is incredibly satisfying. Vanquish pulls that off really well. Once you know the ins and outs of a boss, you can just dance around them. Each of the bosses have a good variety of attacks, and some have little counters that you can use against them. All of them force you to learn their setups and work out counters, and the intervals where you can return fire. Like I said, while the variety of boss fights isn't quite as much as Binary Domain, it's leap and bounds above quite a few modern shooters. The game does have QTEs, and they're mostly boss finishers. It'd be a bit disappointing, but, well, can you watch this and not be entertained? Or this. In some cases, failing QTE doesn't kill you, and you can just wrap the bosses up in a more traditional way. Speaking of wrapping things up traditionally, like all boss fights against Crystal Vipers in a dam complex on a space colony, you know, where it ends with them exploding, blowing the dam, and thus opening a hole in the side of the space station, well, this game follows that tradition. So, with a giant hole in a space station, having the expected yet undesired result, Sam and co head into the guts of the station to seal it off and basically make sure that not everyone suffocates.
What's it looking like outside?
There are still some stragglers heading for the shelter.
How much time we got left?
Not sure, but if you don't hurry, internal pressure in the colony will drop below sustainable levels.
Enough of the physics! Just shut the damn blast doors!
Even with some time left, Burns is more than happy to lock his troops out.
How many people you think have already died for this? Failure is not an option now. It never was.
For every Marine that dies, Burns just grows in power, gets a bit more motivated.
What part of Marines complete the mission did you not understand? We do what has to be done.
He has got me there. The Marines' objective was asphyxiation. Either way, from here in the station we can head to the core. Burns decides to stay behind so that he can cover the rear. Sam heads off, and oh look, some intrigue. Burns and the Prez talking about recession.
History should lend credence to that theory.
So, after blowing up giant warships, jets sliding across crumbling highways, boxing in the face of a 100-foot tall robot, riding the craziest rail line ever, and smoking at least 40 in a day, we're nearing the core. Oh, and someone is actually physically meeting with Burns back in the control room. Somehow. Sam decides robots and the giant microwave laser ahead are of greater concern, and we head on, running into a repeat boss fight. This one, a bit less explosive, mind.
Sam, get out of there!
We're about to press on, but...
I got myself into a little ambush.
You too? I'm sending the rest of the Marines your way.
Sam decides to head on alone, and we quickly come across Candide, shutting down the laser.
Stay back! I've told you we can't trust the Commander-in-Chief. Why are you...
Oh, hey Burns. More friendly fire?
Burns! Why? Sorry, Sam. This fight is for the men going home in pine boxes now.
Burns reveals his purpose. So, he came all this way not to shut down the laser, but to point it at Moscow.
Manually.
What, is he going to fly outside and push it? I mean, I guess the new jetpack would help with that.
War is not economic stimulus. San Francisco is gone now.
That was for the good of all Americans.
God, I love that line. It's so beautifully stupid. Anyway, Sam ain't exactly happy with frying Moscow alive, and Burns is now properly equipped to be a boss. And bloody hell, it can be a tough battle. It's a multiple-stage chase to the core. Burns has a legion of jetpack-clad soldiers backing him up, and they will make sure you have a hard time finding comfortable cover. If you want to do this boss start to finish without using checkpoints, it goes on for more than 10 minutes. It's a great battle besides, a real slugfest, because Burns has a hell of a health bar. It's a constant back and forth of moving to new cover and gunning down people who moments ago you were trying to help. Burns is defeated, soldiers are swarming the room in an effort to capture Sam, and well... and Sam proves to be forgiving beyond all logical reason.
Burns, you gotta stay still.
You win, Sam. Now get out of here.
No, we leave together.
Luckily, Burns pretty much concedes that Sam won the right for him not to destroy an entire city, and covers Sam as he goes on ahead, and decides that there's no better way to go out than killing more of your own countrymen.
My men are dead. I belong with them.
Yeah, but I don't think they deserve you in the afterlife. And with that, Burns explodes. You know, for all of my shit talking, Burns is actually entertaining as hell. Immediately after the Burns fight, we run into Zaitsev, and he fucks up that corridor we were using.
Are you kidding me?
Zaitsev also brought a friend along for this rumble.
Nothing better than a smoke to remind you you're alive. Just won't let me finish this one in peace, will ya?
Smokes can't be finished, revelations come forth.
Madam Winters backed our takeover of Russia.
The president was behind your coup?
She promised to support our sovereign government.
And the US president aided the Russian Star coup so that they could later go to war against them. Then I guess they got a little bit pissy when Russia kickstarted the war with a giant space laser, which is arguably a wiser declaration of war than sending a letter in the post. And with that, we're on to the final battle. It's a repeat of an earlier boss fight, albeit we're fighting two of them at the same time, and they have some new moves. For a final boss fight in a Platinum game, it is a bit of a letdown. If I were to say anything about Vanquish in relation to other titles from the same studio, it's one of the most grounded, and this finale encapsulates that. And yeah, if you're unfamiliar with Platinum and you're looking at this footage and thinking this is the most grounded, that is the case. They are typically at least 10 times more insane than this. This is still really fucking enjoyable, but, you know, this is the most sane that it gets. After one of the two suits are destroyed...
Pain in the ass. Damn it! Can this suit react faster? Elena, touch the safety limiters on the suit.
Sam, they're there for a reason. It isn't safe.
Getting killed out here isn't safe either.
Understood. I'm disabling them now.
Sam turns off the power limiters on his suit, and this makes his slide way faster, and obviously allows him to remain in ARS mode much longer. But it's not that much of a game changer. Plus, unlike most other Platinum games where I'd have expected this kind of thing, you can't go back and New Game Plus it with this upgraded suit. Looking at the cutscene that precedes this fight, I was kind of hoping for an off-the-rails aerial battle flying about the colony core. It's still a challenging and enjoyable end, no doubt, It demands that you split your attention between two very fast and aggressive opponents, but it doesn't bring anything new to the table. Either way, with both robots beaten, we round off with a QTE. And come to learn that both were remote controlled. Oh, and one is going to detonate, so we flee the station. And this is the ending, and it has some serious emotional whiplash. We go from Sam narrowly escaping the blast and cheerily reuniting with Mission Control, and then he starts lamenting that he's like Burns because
We both sacrificed others to uphold our own ideals.
nah, I don't see it, but hey Sam, you've earned whatever melodrama you want. Then we cut to the deliciously evil Zaitsev declaring what just happened a success and flying away in a dumb space pod. And then we cut to the US President.
This is the end of my presidency.
Then we have a space credits shooter sequence set to upbeat and heroic music. I'm really sad that we'll probably never see a sequel to Vanquish. Sequel hooks were dropped at the ending. San Fran is fucked, and the bad guy got away smiling. It's just a really fun and knowingly stupid game. If you even slightly enjoy shooters, you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't get it. When I sat down to replay it for a review, I remembered liking it when I played it years earlier. But fuck, it's just even better than I'd remembered. The gimmicks it have remain fun throughout their runtime, the weapons are all satisfying to use, and the enemies and bosses provide a great test for your abilities. It's a game about flashy maneuvers and quick thinking. Replaying it has cemented it as one of my favourite games overall.